So don't expect Kirby Smart to do this too often, even though he has talked about a weakness for Georgia before. But he had a Q&A. He did a Q&A with ESPN's Chris Lowe recently. You go through, read through it. Go check it out on ESPN. It's an interesting Q&A, right? Because Kirby, look, we get to talk to him a few times during the spring, kind of in, an in-season type of capacity, Monday noon press conference type of deal. We get those on Tuesdays right now, but you don't ever get the one-on-one, the nitty-gritty with him. It's just not what we get. It's more of an official press conference capacity talk, and so he doesn't reveal this stuff all the time. But he was talking about Georgia's defensive line and Georgia's offensive line because he was asked about, and I've got it pulled up, but he was asked about what has gotten his attention through spring practice. He wasn't asked, hey, Kirby, where do you think your weakest unit is? He said, what's gotten your attention during spring practice? So this is something that Kirby Smart is just noticing. I think that we've come on here, I've definitely come on here and talked about how over the course of the last few seasons, the defensive line's gotten a little bit worse and a little bit worse. Bear with me, I'm dealing with some rough allergies right now. The defensive line, it's just regressed a little bit, right? And part of that is because they've had some serious superstar caliber football players at that spot. And they've had some first round picks at that spot with a Jordan Davis and a Jalen Carter and a Devontae Wyatt, right? And Trayvon Walker. And now you've got a group that's got a mixture of guys, old and young, right? You've got a couple freshmen. You've got a couple of freshmen from last year, right? Jamal Jarrett and Jordan Hall. You've got older guys that are sticking around for year 4, year 5. Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson. Michael Williams is kind of a hybrid outside linebacker and defensive lineman now. So is this group the weak point for Georgia? And I was already going to make a video discussing if the front seven, more specifically the defensive line, is the weak point for Georgia because it felt like last year that was one of the weaker points, and now Kirby's made a comment about it. So let's talk about it. Ryan Curley from Dawg here talking about Kirby Smart and what he said to Chris Lowe. He just doesn't reveal this kind of stuff all the time. Listen to this. What's one of the things that's gotten your attention about this team through the first part of spring practice? And here's what he went on to say. Either we're maybe a little weaker on the defensive line or really good on the offensive line. The glaring thing I've seen at practices is that the offensive line has done a really good job. That's not to say we're subpar on the defensive line last year. We just weren't great. We didn't have a dominant guy, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, those type of guys. But we were always going to be good on defense. I don't know that we're going to be great this year, but I think we have a chance to be great on offense. Okay, Kirby, there's actually more to unpack there than just talking about the defensive line in those few sentences of what Kirby Smart said the other day, or whenever exactly this was done with Chris Lowe. I actually do think there's a lot to unpack. Is it that Georgia's offensive line is so good, or is Georgia's defensive line a little bit weaker? And I think that we live in a world where both of those things can be true. Because especially recently, as spring practice has kind of come underway, we've discussed Georgia's offensive line is legit. I think it's one of the strong points of this football team when you talk about how much experience, how much playing time, how many snaps between all of these guys, how many national championships they've played for, how many playoff games that they've played in. Between the group, right? Obviously, Jared Wilson has played a lot, but the rest of the line has played a lot. Now, that's starting to become true about the defensive line because Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson have been around for a while, and they used to play reserve roles, and then they were starters last year, and they started a lot in 2022 as well. Let's not act like both of those guys weren't serious rotational pieces for the Georgia Bulldogs, if not straight up starters, right next to Jalen Carter on that defensive line. Now this is an experience in an older group, the way it kind of was in 2021 when the defense got experienced and got older for Georgia, and all of a sudden they were boasting one of the best defenses in college football, right? Jordan Davis was an older guy. Devontae Wyatt was an older guy. You had really big-time superstars that were mixed in at younger ages, right? So Jalen Carter was a sophomore in 2021. And you get that kind of mixture, right? Because Michael Williams is a junior. They'll have some players that are sophomores. So now you got a group that has played together a little bit longer. Still think that it might be the weak point, but it might be hard to tell during practice because of how good Georgia's offensive line is. So Georgia's defensive line on a daily basis in practice is seeing what is probably the best offensive line unit in college football. So something to hang your hat on and be more positive about in this conversation, because Kirby obviously, talked about it in a little bit of a negative connotation in discussing his defensive line. But something positive to take away from it would be that, hey, look, those guys are getting better and better every single day in practice because they are going against the best, and not many other programs can say that their defensive line is going up against that quality of an offensive line in practice every single day. So one of those iron sharpens iron kind of deals. At least at the very least that, I just repeated myself a little bit there, but at the very least, hey, these guys are getting better and they're not seeing anything crazier in the games because they're already seeing one of the best in practice. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit more about what he said. We didn't have a dominant guy, but we're always going to be good on defense. I don't know that we're going to be great this year, but I think we have a chance to be great on offense. So this is actually a take that I've had boiling a little bit. And I haven't exactly said. The coffee's not sitting right, guys. Bear with me. I think that this Georgia offense is going to be very similar as last year in terms of production. I think that the Georgia offense, look, it was top 5 in scoring offense. It was top 5 in total offense in terms of yardage and production. I just kind of see a repeat of that, to be quite honest with you guys. I think that Georgia's offense is going to be that good again because I don't think that much has changed. Yes, you lose a Brock Bowers. You lose Ladd McConkey, you lose those running backs. I think the running production is going to be good again. I think it has a chance to be more steady than it was last year. Right, it wasn't elite, it was pretty good. Passing-wise, you expect Carson Beck to take a step forward. And he's got a ton of weapons. He's got a really good offensive line. It just makes a lot of sense for this offense to be one of the best again, because it's been one of the best in college football for the last few years. That did not change last year. What happened with Georgia's defense? Still a top 10 defense. Right? It's still one of the best defenses in the country. So, but they're playing to a standard, and that's kind of what's the problem at Georgia, at least in terms of discussing it, is that it's compared against a standard that's pretty unrealistic, and that's just being elite at everything all the time, winning national championships, holding opponents to 10 points per game, having all these shutouts. When you accomplish that and Kirby Smart preaches about a standard, then that kind of becomes what you measure everything against. And so Georgia's defense, at least in recent history and near the 2021 team, is going to be compared to what they accomplished in the back-to-back run. It's just human nature to do it. And so, no, the defense wasn't fantastic, but it was still a really good defense that was only letting up about 15 points per game, which was good for top 10 in the country last year. You do that again and couple that with a really good offense, this Georgia team is going to be right back in the position it was with an opportunity to go to the playoff and win a national championship, which is the position that it was in heading into the SEC championship game. Just lost that game, and that ended up knocking them out of the playoffs, which is something that Kirby Smart talks a little bit about during this Q&A. If you want to go check it out, maybe I'll discuss a little bit of what he said further. But I do think it'll be a great Georgia offense, and I don't think it's going to be this crazy Georgia defense. Still unsure as who a couple of the starters are going to be in the secondary. I think that the linebacker room is perfectly fine. Is there going to be a game changer on the defensive line? Because Kirby basically said there in that Q&A how much that matters, and they don't have a Jalen Carter, right? Can Michael Williams become that? If he is becoming that, or if somebody is becoming that, would Kirby actually reveal that to us? I don't think so, but that's where I'm at with this thing. I think that Georgia's offense is going to be really, really good. I think Georgia's defense is going to be really good, but just not as good as the offense. And the defensive line, look, it's a good defensive line. It's just not phenomenal, but they're going to get better every single day in practice because they're going up against the best. Interesting that Kirby Smart made these comments. Thanks for watching.